Daily Tech News Show is powered by its audience, not outside organizations. To find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support.
This is the Daily Tech News for July 1983. From DTNS headquarters in Greenville, Illinois, I'm Tom Merritt.
And from Sebastopol, California, I'm Sarah Lane.
Oh, really?
What?
We're going to have to start over because we can't hear you, Sarah.
What?
I can hear.
No idea.
Can you hear me, Tom? Tom.
So Tom's got problems.
Okay, here we
So
go.
Tom,
Can you hear all of
Tom, can you hear us?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, you can hear me.
And you can hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Hold on. 3, 2.
Daily Tech News Show is powered by its audience, not outside organizations. To find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support.
Nope, I screwed that up. 3, 2.
Daily Tech News Show is powered by its audience, not outside organizations. To find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support.
This is the Daily Tech News for July 1983. From DTNS headquarters in Greenville, Illinois, I'm Tom Merritt.
And from Sebastopol, California, where I live, I'm Sarah Lane.
From Etobicoke, Ontario, I'm Jenn Cutter.
And of course, joining us, our producer, Roger Chang. Roger, thank you for joining us on this remote broadcast that we're doing.
Yes, it's a rare sunny day here in the Bay Area.
I hope you're enjoying the cassettes that we mail out to everyone of the show, where we go through and talk about all of the computing news every month. And this month is no exception. July 1983 could not be a more exciting time to live in. Let's start with a few computer things you should know. Grolier Electronic Publishing has made the Academic American Encyclopedia the first unabridged online encyclopedia accessible from the Dow Jones News Retrieval System or BRS Inc. The encyclopedia is searchable by subject and biographical name. On BRS, you can also choose 2 words. And check this, the system will retrieve every sentence that contains both words, even if the words aren't next to each other. It'll just look, it'll know where a sentence is and find those 2 words. The encyclopedia was tested in Videotex in Columbus, Ohio, so if you're lucky enough to live there, you might have got to check that out. It's scheduled to go live later this year on Viewtron as well, a Videotex service in southern Florida. Grolier plans to make a video disc edition of the encyclopedia available with announcements coming later this summer on that. I have to say, the idea of being able to look up anything in an encyclopedia is exciting enough on its own in an online system, but these search capabilities are pretty impressive.
I just wonder what it's going to do to everybody's encyclopedia bookcases that we all have. I mean,
right?
This would be nice if I hadn't invested in my 400-pound encyclopedia that takes up the entire wall of my living room. But now that I have, do I really need this?
Free up living room space, right?
Well, I guess so.
I can think of more than a few libraries that might be interested in this because they are clearing some space to make room at the main library in San Francisco for a new San Francisco only collection, which means that they're going to have to toss out a lot of books. And if you can save space by using an online encyclopedia, I think that would be pretty keen.
You know, Jen, I don't know what the retrieval fees are for something like Dow Jones or BRS in Canada, but it might be worth it, right?
I'm more interested in the video disc release because this way, like you're saving space. You don't have all that bookshelf, and you've got it right at your fingertips. You can use your own system.
Oh, that's true. I mean, it's even somewhat portable then, right? You could take the video disc with you, as long as someone else has a video disc player on the other end attached to a microcomputer, and then carry an encyclopedia around in a way that one that's on Sarah's bookshelves can't be carried around.
It's a total game changer for universities, for students, for people like me who like to read.
And the search capabilities just blow me away. I mean, the
fact that the 2 words don't have to be in any particular order. You just have to know that whatever you're searching for might contain these two terms, and it just pull it up automatically. Feels pretty magical.
Yeah, that's a smart.
I'm going to feel a little bad for the librarians here because I am one of those people that hit them up when I need to cross-reference, subject matter like whales or something. And
that's something to consider. The downside to any technology like this is the loss of jobs. We may not see librarians or libraries by the 90s. I mean, and we're going to have a transition plan for people who work in those areas.
Well, or just imagine what libraries are going to look like in the 90s. I mean, do you just walk into a big structure and people sit at computers and look for things?
Yeah, that's what I think. You'd have something like a TRS-80 or an IBM PC, several of them available, hooked up to these video disc players, maybe with some kind of network connectivity that you would pay for, perhaps, in order to access information. But you only need one or two people to monitor something like that.
Well, quick question. How many of you would really miss the Dewey Decimal System?
Oh, please. Yeah. I mean, it belongs in a museum, literally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a kid. It's never made much sense to me anyway. Bring on the tech. Tom, it's funny that you mentioned the TRS-80 because according to Byte magazine, Radio Shack has unveiled the TRS-80 Model 4. So this new machine features a built-in 12-inch monochrome 80-column display, 70-key typewriter-like keyboard with a 12-key numeric keypad as well, 4 megahertz Z80A microprocessor, 64 kilobytes of memory that it can be expanded to 128, an RS-232C serial port, 2 184K byte floppy disk drives. It's got a lot of stuff here. Model 4 is compatible with all Model 3 software, including OSs like CP/M+, LDOS, TRS-DOS, although Radio Shack is planning writing new software to take advantage of the monitor's 80-column mode, like a spreadsheet calculator and a word processor. The Model 4 will retail for $1,999.
That's reasonable.
That's cheap. I mean, I was scoping out an Apple II, complete with its own RGB monitor and disk drives, and I was looking at something well over $3,000. I mean, $2,000 for a computer with disk drives and a monitor. That's pretty competitive.
Well, and even if you have to pay a little extra, you can expand it to 128 kilobytes. It's got the standard RS-232 serial port and backward compatibility. That's huge if you've got a Model 3 right now. You don't want to have to buy all new software. Although I do like the idea of taking advantage of 80-column mode. I do run into that a lot, especially if I'm using a computer like a TI-99 hooked up to a television.
Well, I'm going to say this, and it might seem kind of out of left field, but thank God they included the numeric keypad. I mean, I'm really annoyed that you're going to have to spend out-of-pocket change. I mean, Apple II doesn't come with a numeric keypad. You got to spend extra.
Yeah.
I mean, the only ones that really do are like the high-end business machines like an IBM PC. And, I mean, God knows I don't have $4,000 sitting around to buy one of those.
Now, I know, I have a reputation as being a little bit of an Apple II fan because that's where I learned to program BASIC. But the TRS-80 has made a lot of progress, and I think the Model 4 shows that. Jen, do you have a dog in this fight?
I'm interested in the 80-column thing. Is it going to stretch some of my Model 3 stuff? Like, are the games going to look okay, or is it going to be warped?
Well, so this is the great thing about TSR-80, especially the Model 3.
Or even TRS-80.
I mean, all the games are text-based. So Infocom, some of the stuff from Broderbund, I mean, it's all text-based. So, I mean, it's like typing on a Hercules monochrome monitor. I mean, it's going to be sharp, it's going to be text, and it's going to look nice.
I just think with the fact that Radio Shack is selling computers that are so affordable with such great specs, wonder how long Radio Shack will call itself Radio Shack.
Yeah, when is it going to be Computer Shack?
Yeah, it seems like Computer Shack is probably the next best idea.
It really is becoming that. Like,
I'm going to say this right now: Radio Shack will be a major competitor in the home computing space, and then in for at least the next 10, 15 years.
I think it becomes your destination. I mean, it is the place. No disrespect to your local computer hobby shop, right, or your local computer guy. Those are going to continue to survive. But Radio Shack fills a niche in a lot of places, like Greenville. The Will of the Wind hobby shop is our Radio Shack. They're all one and the same. It is the local guy there, and I think that's the beauty of Radio Shack. I do see it getting bigger and bigger. I don't know if we'll see like mall-size stores like a JCPenney or anything, but I do think the future is bright because Radio Shack is willing to pivot into this without abandoning the base. You could still get your resistors and your ham radio supplies.
I mean, they're in a very competitive spot. They're not a department store where you get your Ataris, you get your Commodores in the electronics section, but they're also not the specialized computer store. So they have both kind of a retail space that allows them to sell a lot of plain stuff, but also computers, and I think it puts them in a very good position.
Now, I know we get a lot of complaints that, you guys talk about Radio Shack, but one of the reasons we do is because they are doing so much in this space that we all love. In the latest issue of Compute, the Fort Worth-based company has introduced a new portable computer that fits on your lap. Talk about carrying the video disc. Now you can carry a whole computer around with you. It's the TRS-80 Model 100, measuring 2 inches thick, 11 and 7/8 inches wide, and 8.5 inches long, weighing 4 pounds. Has a built-in liquid crystal display that is 40 characters wide and 8 lines deep, featuring a full-size typewriter keyboard. Model 100 uses 4 AA batteries, which can power the machine for around 20 hours. You get a whole day's work out of this thing, no problem. You could also use an AC adapter and plug it in. It's got built-in nickel-cadmium batteries that keep data in the memory for up to 30 days when the Model 100 is turned off. 8K RAM model sells for $800 and the 24K RAM version for $1,000. And either of those can be expanded to 32K, which is huge.
I'm going to say this now. This device will become a must-have for any journalist worth their salt, because I mean, whether you're covering a local crime scene, you're doing the local news beat, or you're traveling halfway across the world to cover, a peace summit, you're going to want one of these. I mean, think about it. You get rid of your notepad, you can type your stories on the machine. 4 pounds? I mean, come on. That's like 2 pieces of paper.
Yeah, and I mean, unless you're actually on the move, I don't know how many people are really going to put a laptop on their lap, or computer rather. But
I like that. I like what you just came up with, the laptop. That's a great name.
Right. It's that's, I think what they mean is, hey, it's small enough to fit on your lap. I mean, most people still are going to put their computers on a desk.
I mean, but you're right. This portable computer, different than the compacts we've seen, is literally could fit on your lap. That's amazing.
I mean, I like the term briefcase computer, but because I'm sticking this in my briefcase. I'm taking this to my meetings. I'm taking notes on it, and you know what? Between my lunches or not my lunches, between my meetings and my lunch break, I can do a simple thing like type up a draft of my story, and then it saves it when it's off. This is amazing. I don't need a drive to store the text I just typed in, and it takes 4 AA batteries. I mean, this is the future.
Granted, the battery life is nothing compared to a flashlight, but considering what more you can do on this, plus at 4 pounds, you're right. This is not luggable. This is portable. That's a big difference.
Oh, my grandfather works at U of T and would love one of these. He could be in his office during the day with his computer and then take it home and still use it at night, and I can steal it from him.
You could. It's only 4 pounds.
That's a piece of cake.
Stick it in your backpack and make off with it. Take that.
Moving on, Children's Computer Workshop, a new division of Children's Television Workshop, announced new educational programs for the Radio Shack Color Computer and Atari 2600 VCS, with more systems to follow. These games feature Sesame Street characters like Cookie Monster, Ernie, and Grover, while aiming to increase math and reading readiness skills. Atari and Children's Computer Workshop also introduced a new Atari Kids controller to make playing more accessible to young children without requiring a full keyboard.
This is amazing. And again, it points to the future where, my parents have always been worried about, the kids spending too much time watching TV. And I think this shows that, hey, you know what? You can take what they've tried to do with Children's Television Workshop, put it on a microcomputer, and suddenly all those concerns evaporate. Now you've got something that is directly educational and the child can participate in. They're not just sitting there passively staring at the screen themselves.
Well, and if it makes a good point that if we have a kid's controller, that takes the pressure off a child to know how to type, or understand how, depending on the age, how words are even spelled, that sort of thing. I think that would hinder a lot of kids being plunked down in front of a computer to do something different than watch TV, but be a little overwhelmed.
I think we're coming into possibly a new age of education, and where education and software meet. I mean, we have Sticky Bear just came on the market helping kids to read. You have Broder Bund coming out with a suite of software that allows kids to learn things like geography. There's some called Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? So you can learn about different capitals around the world. I mean, it's great. I mean, I think this is what we anticipated when we talk about technology and education coming together. This could be a fantastic thing.
It's learning without knowing that you're learning.
Right. And like you said, Sticky Bear is huge. Everyone's worried that, kids are going to play things like Jumpman and Donkey Kong on the computer. This shows that that's not all that it's good for kids. So I think this is a positive move forward.
Especially for the younger kids.
Yeah.
Like Ernie's Magic Shapes, you get Ernie. Everybody loves Ernie. He's got a magician's hat, and you just kind of use the controller, the kid's one, to point at what he's asking you to look for. You get to read, you get to play with shapes, you've got music. It's like you're working with your Sesame Street pals.
And I know I'm looking ahead a bit, but it makes me wonder what kinds of children's programming will be offered. Is the TV going the way of the dodo sooner than later, because kids will all be on computers with it's sort of a different non-video type format?
Yeah, no, you need the TV to hook the Atari 2600 up to. That's it. That's all you need it for.
Right.
That's a bold prediction, Tom. I think it's but I can totally see it. Totally see it.
I do get that some people are worried, like, wait a minute, if I buy the Atari 2600, is my kid going to just play Donkey Kong on it? And I think that's always going to be a problem with new technology. It has to be supervised. Parents have to take part and encourage kids. But with this kind of educational software out there, more and more, I think it's great. Shelley Heller and Judith Axler Turner of Popular Computing magazine note that Los Angeles programmer Steve Grumet has rewritten the 1960s era computer conversation program Eliza in BASIC. Could you imagine? This thing needed a mainframe from MIT in the 60s. Now he can write it in BASIC. His company, Artificial Intelligence Research Group, is selling it for $25, or if you pay an extra $20, pay $45, you get the unprotected source code that you can then customize yourself. It works on the Apple II, IIe, and the II. Works on the IBM PC, the Osborne One, and other CP/M-based computers. There's also a version of Eliza called Terry, who even starts by saying he's filling in for Eliza. Terry works on the Atari 400 and 800. As long as you have that 32K RAM, it's $16, so it's quite a bit cheaper. And there's a version called Abuse, which insults you if you insult it. And that was actually the most expensive, or not the most expensive, but it was more expensive than Terry. It's $20. Works on Apple II, IIe. Needs 48K of RAM for all that abuse. And also works on the Atari 400 and 800 with 40K RAM.
This really kind of underscores how powerful computers are today. And to have these programs at home on a home computer, I mean, it's unheard of. I think this is really just a first step into a long line of programs where we talk to the computer and it talks back to us.
I want to know what kind of insults we're going to get. I mean, it's what is this computer going to say to me if I insult it?
Is that okay? Yeah.
It's like, how does the computer know what to say?
I mean, are we going to be looking at HAL in just maybe in 5 to 8 years, just coming home and it's talking to us and we tell it to do things for us, like tell us the time or maybe turn on the lights or, you know what, I'm out of milk, go order me some milk, go get milk home delivered or something with my groceries from the local grocery store.
But then you have to have the computer on all the time. I mean, as much as I love that scenario, that seems...
Well, no,
really
I mean,
hard.
the way
power intensive and
the way some of the things like CompuServe have worked, you put in your order and then it'll tell you when to expect delivery. So you could shut down the computer after that. I mean, I guess if you're worried about it getting canceled or something, you have to put in a telephone number as a backup. But it can work without having to be constantly taking up the phone line.
But I also think this underscores how powerful BASIC is. I mean, BASIC has been touted as the beginner's programming language. It's fully interpreted. It means you don't need to compile it to run it. And maybe it's not as structured as Fortran or COBOL.
Oh, certainly not. Yeah.
But definitely, I mean, that's a very powerful language to be able to recreate something like this for the home market.
I think it's amazing that you have the option to pick up the unprotected source code.
Right.
Who else is doing that right now to make it so that you can customize this thing without having to start from scratch and type it all in?
Although some people would argue that it's a cash grab to make you pay to get the source code. You should get the source code anyway when you pay for software. But I understand what you're saying. It's an interesting model. I haven't seen that either. I don't know. I mean, I tried Eliza on BASIC, and if she's a program, you could start to see where she's a little repetitive or avoiding what you say. But I think if you really didn't know somehow that you were talking to a computer, that it could fool some people. I mean, this is the beginning of AI. It's incredibly exciting.
Imagine if, Eliza became, like an assistant that humans actually got used to talking to as if it was
Yeah. You could just type in whatever you want, and it could... I don't know how it'd carry it out, but yeah.
Well, it's a pen pal. I don't know.
Just somebody to talk
Eliza, the idea of it being a female of some kind. Like,
if they had telecommunication services like Hayes modem support or something, and you could dial into a service, like at my university, and then upload things or download things as needed. I think it would be pretty nice. Pretty nice.
Hey, folks, if you don't have time to listen to these cassettes all the time, we understand. That's why we also make a compressed headlines version of the show available on Dictaphone. It's a smaller cassette and a smaller show, and you can get that from the same place that you get this show. It's called the Daily Tech Headlines. All right, I want to talk a little bit about another story in this month's Popular Computing magazine, written by A. Richard Immel. The title is Software Piracy Justified? Software piracy is a problem. It's something that you think of as hobbyists. You think of as companies saying, people getting together and swapping disks is taking money out of our pockets. But that's not all. In fact, Immler makes the really good point that there is corporate piracy being engaged in by technical officers of corporations. They generally use it to maybe run a piece of software on multiple machines when they only are authorized to run it on one. Sometimes it's used for good, though, cracking into code to fix bugs or even make backup copies, which a lot of corporations feel they shouldn't have to pay extra for. Backupping your software, I think, is one reason. I'll be honest, I copy software I buy because I want a backup. And when you're paying, $70 or $80 for Lotus 123, it comes on a single floppy. And if that goes, you're going to have a hard time asking the company to, give you an additional copy. And, having a backup, isn't that what we all do? When I write a report, I keep a copy of it that off in a drawer locked somewhere in a file cabinet. It makes sense to have a copy of software that you have bought. Now, granted, piracy is an issue in that, but I think the concerns about piracy are warranted. But I don't necessarily believe that the answer to it has been very successful.
Well, sure. If it's for personal usage, as you've described, Roger, I totally agree with you because you're creating a backup, right? It's some sort of a safety net. What about in these more corporate institutions where there might be copies of software that have not technically been paid for? And I mean, who's going to go after these corporations for things like this? Who's monitoring this sort of stuff? I mean, piracy is piracy, right? It's stealing.
Honestly, I think maybe it might be the model, the way they sell the software, instead of selling it like a book, right, where you just get the one copy and you read it, and people think you can go and hand it out. It's a different model that calls for a different kind of answer than what people have been doing so far, which I think is, looking at it from the days when vinyl LPs, which are still very popular today, but are being slowly passed over for newer technologies.
Right, and there's some optical disc technology, smaller versions of laser discs that are being explored as ways of a more durable form, a more faithful fidelity for music. So we're definitely moving to different storage options that will address some of these problems. But right now, I get the problems on both sides. If I'm a company and I just spent a lot of money, I spent $1,500 on 4 copies of a piece of software, I want to have a backup of it just in case, right? That makes sense. I've spent a lot of money on something. If one of them gets damaged, I want to be able to replace it. Now, some software vendors are more amenable to replacing than others, but they all want to prevent the abuse of people pretending that their software is damaged, and replacing it that way. Some companies offer backup copies at a slightly reduced fee from buying a full new copy, but that can be abused too. So it's a matter of trust at the end of it here. And Mr. Immel actually has 3 different scenarios for why different corporate officers might engage in software piracy. I was thinking I might run these by the panel here, and you guys tell me what you think of whether these are over the line or not.
All right.
So the first one is Mr. Finance. Now these are taken from actual people that he interviewed, but they're not
little pseudonyms.
Yeah, they're not going to give their names. Mr. Finance has 4 copies of VisiCalc available for use on 12 computers. For convenience, he made some extra copies so that the 12 computers don't have to go running down the hall to find out who had it last. No more than 1 version is running at a time, he says. So he's not like running 12 versions and really trying to get around. He says he thought spending $1,500 on the 4 copies was enough to justify needing to run 1 at a time, and making the copies was a convenience because maybe one of the corporate officers has taken it home and they have a microcomputer at home that they use.
Well, I don't want to tattletale here, but I know that my grandfather at the university does a similar thing for all of the students so that they can practice and get better and be ready for the corporate world, because there isn't really any kind of way to get it cheaper for the educational institutions.
I mean, to be honest, I think Mr. Finance might have a point. I mean, if you're using it, I mean, again, I think we're, I don't know what the model will be, but I'm not sure the model we're using right now is really fit for the way software is used.
But he's breaking copy protection.
Well, it's, yeah. I mean, what if you could,
Sarah, what do you think of Mr. Finance?
I think Mr. Finance, he's got 4 copies of software. He's got 12 computers. His team, I get why this is very convenient for them, but would the software manufacturer be happy to know that he didn't buy 12 copies for the 12 computers?
No, yeah, definitely not.
So that's, it's sort of like, I get why it works for him, but if he's not allowed to do that.
But only 1 is running at a time. Remember, I mean, you have to have the disk and put it in the computer. This is just for convenience. This is just so you don't have to run down the hall or find who left it at home. He swears they're not running more than 1 at a time.
Well, and if Mr. Finance is being honest, then great. I just feel like there's such a this really opens it up to abuse by people who are not going to be
Well,
honest.
there you go. It's all about trust, right? Mr. Consultant keeps programs like word processors in a library. That's pretty common, where folks can check it out, get the disks, put it in, use the word processor when they need it. However, each copy is supposed to be licensed to a single machine. So he's violating the license by letting people get it out of the library and use it, even though it's a floppy disk, right? I mean, you can put it in any machine, but technically it's only supposed to be used on one machine.
Well, this kind of relates to Mr. Finance. If only one machine is using it at a time, is it really a violation?
But that's the license. The license says it should be, you have to buy one copy for every machine you're going to use it on.
Well, I know in my my old university library, this is how it worked. They had they actually had two computers, and you would go up and you would take the software from behind the desk, and they would only have one copy. So whether it's WordStar or some education related program, you put it in and you run it. And, that's the end of it. It's hard to. I mean, I understand, but at the same time, I
think this is a restrictive license, don't you guys?
Yeah, I think. What if they just?
If I buy a floppy disk, I should be free to put it in any computer I want, as long as I don't make a copy of it. Copy protection is meant to protect copies.
It's like taking an LP and saying you can only play it on this one exact turntable.
Right. No, exactly. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that I agree with you guys there. As long as there aren't copies being made that the originating company hasn't authorized, I think this seems fair.
Well, I think honestly, Mr. Consultant he's following the spirit of the law, if not the letter.
Sure. No, that's a good way of putting it. Finally, Mr. Office Man has 20 copies of a piece of software for 100 employees. And he says, you know what? If the company that I spent the money buying the 20 copies of doesn't like it, we'll stop doing business with you. They use copy to PC, so programs can be loaded onto hard disks. Loading onto hard disks usually is prevented by copy protection. Now, this is a little more sophisticated. This is an office manager saying, look, I've got 20 copies. I got 100 employees, and they're all going to be able to use it. I'm going to load it on the hard disk. You don't like it? We'll take our business somewhere else. We don't care about your licensing terms.
But like Mr. Office and Mr. Consultant, very similar issue. I mean, it's if he has 20 copies and there's 20 machines.
Mr. Consultant is using one copy, though, at a time, whereas he's not making copies. Mr. Office Man is making copies. Not only making copies, he's putting them on a hard drive.
Well, that's so I think this goes back to two things: verification and the licensing model. What if the licensing model was a little not as restrictive, and it was based on kind of a timeshare principle? You can only use the software for, like, say, the 12 hours of the day, and this is what you pay. Doesn't matter who runs it. Doesn't matter what machine it runs on.
Sometimes I think all of these issues are just a result of the fact that software is natively not something you should be able to protect. That software used to be the thing that you just used to run the hardware you bought. And people should be able to fix bugs. People should be able to go in and change the software to use the machine they're using. I get that microcomputers are different than the more single-purpose machines that we used to have. But at the same time, I know there's a lot of companies out there making money, and it's a business, but you're fighting against the winds here. You're fighting against the nature of code.
It just makes me wonder what's going to happen to these software companies that are making software that everyone wants to use, particularly in an office setting. It's valuable, but if you're a company that can only sell a certain amount of copies, kind of knowing that behind closed doors there are copies being made, you can't keep track of all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Are we putting companies in jeopardy by exhibiting this behavior, even if we feel it's warranted?
What if they make their money not on writing the software, but supporting it? So you pay them, but it's like a subscription fee.
I don't know. I mean, I think one of the issues with copy protection right now is these technical officers at companies are like, we're better at fixing the bugs than the software companies are. Like, I don't think anybody wants to pay the software company to manage something that they feel like they can manage better. They just want access to the code.
Well, code is one thing, but Mr. Officeman is very dedicated to stealing more copies of the software than he's entitled to. It doesn't seem like he's about fixing the bugs as a solution.
No, it's not the only reason. That's true. And that goes back to Sarah's point of, if Mr. Officeman gets his way too often, these software companies are going to run out of business. There's a question of how big of a business can software ever be when it faces this problem.
It's going to have to solve it. It's going to have to solve it before it moves forward.
I think this just shows that hardware makers will always be the bigger companies than software companies. All right, let's finish up with something out of our mailbag, Sarah.
Charles D. Case from Raleigh, North Carolina writes, Campbell University School of Law, where I am an adjunct professor of computer law, began offering a course in computer law 3 years ago. Campbell also requires each law student to take a course in the use of microcomputers in the law office and offers courses in the use of Westlaw legal research system. Now, as is typical for other high technology areas around the country, the microelectronics and information industries located in Research Triangle Park offer excellent opportunities to private practitioners like myself engaged in the wide range of issues involved in computer law. There's more and more of them, apparently. Because of the pervasiveness of information technology, lawyers and law students must develop a working knowledge of computers and computer law in order to provide complete services to clients who rely on these technologies. It's really opening up a whole, area of study, particularly at the university level.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think computer programming and how to use a computer should be just a normal part of high school coursework leading into university, where it should also be a required course.
Like typing. Well, I don't know if it should be required or not, but because typing isn't necessarily required, but it's highly encouraged if you're going to aim yourself at certain places.
If you're going to function in the 80s with so much of our business and so much of our infrastructure moving to computers, you're going to need to have these skills. It's just as important as arithmetic and reading and writing.
Well, I wonder now, back to our piracy discussion, how involved the courts are going to be when the software companies want to challenge, say, Mr. Officeman about his goings-on.
Yeah. Well, and Charles D. Case's letter here, it makes me very hopeful that future judges, which draw from law students generally, will have a good basis in computers and understanding microcomputers and microelectronics. If that's the case, then our future laws should be well established and very helpful.
I'm also really interested to see what kinds of court cases come out of the fact that a lawyer who's very competent in computer law, who might be working for a corporation, who's not real keen on people stealing software, what kind of case against civilians we might be seeing? What kind of cases?
Yeah, are they going to start going after those hobbyists, those folks who get together and eat snacks and trade floppy disks?
Right.
Are we going to see raids like 30s style Keystone Cops running in like, give me your disks, hand them over?
Sure. Yeah, and how will the public react to that? Whose side will they be on? I would argue that the side of the pirate, but it's the law's the law.
It's going to change. I mean, when computers become commonplace as stereos and TVs and refrigerators, and I predict this will happen in the next 8 years, I think you'll have a population that is going to be a little more educated, but also maybe a little more entitled about being able to do things they want with the machine that they paid with their own money.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Jenn Cutter, for joining us. If folks want to follow your work, where should they look?
You should look at openalpha.tv and on this thing called Twitter, where you can just follow me by my name, Jenn Cutter.
It must be similar to CompuServe or something like that.
Genie.
It's interesting. Yeah. And a domain name. Very sophisticated. I love that. If you want to support the show, our mailing address is found at dailytechnewsshow.com/support, and you can mail your checks to us at that address there.
Our email address, I know, we're trying it out, but hopefully we'll get some emails. It's feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. We're live Monday through Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 21:30 UTC at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv for our most pro users, obviously. And our website is dailytechnewsshow.com.
Somehow we're going to have a cassette tomorrow with John Price, Matthew, Paul Boyer, on our listener co-host show. How's that going to happen? Must be the future.
Have to come over.
See you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.